The music was loud. Lights flashing. Laughter echoing across the room. It looked like just another high-end private party. Rich guests, expensive suits, and people trying too hard to impress each other. But something felt off. Near the back of the room, sitting quietly at a small table, was Steven Seagal. Alone. Unbothered. While everyone else chased attention, he avoided it. A glass in his hand, eyes calm, scanning the room like he wasn't there for the party, but for something else. That's when it started. 3 men pushed their way through the crowd, loud, arrogant, clearly looking for trouble. One of them spotted Steven and smirked. "Hey, you look familiar," he said, stepping closer. No response. Steven didn't even look up. The second man laughed. "What's wrong? Too good to talk." Still nothing. Now the third one stepped forward, and this time he grabbed Steven's shoulder. That was the mistake. The room didn't notice it yet. The music kept playing. People kept dancing. But in that small corner, everything changed. Slowly, Steven lifted his eyes. Cold. Focused. Unshaken. "Take your hand off," he said quietly. The man laughed. "Or what?" A pause. Just a second. But it felt longer. "You really don't want to find out," Steven replied. The tension snapped. The man shoved him. Chairs scraped the floor. A few heads turned. The energy shifted. "You think you're tough," the guy said, stepping closer again. "This isn't a movie." For a moment, it looked like Steven might just ignore it, like he would stand up and walk away. But instead, he stood up slowly. Calm. Controlled. No anger. No fear. Just readiness. The 3 men circled him now, confidence growing, thinking they had the upper hand. They didn't. One of them cracked his knuckles. Another picked up a bottle from the table nearby. And the first guy. He leaned in close and whispered. "Wrong place. Wrong time." Steven didn't move. Didn't flinch. Then, almost like a warning, he said one last thing. "You still have a chance to walk away." They laughed. All of them. And that's when the first punch came. Fast. Aggressive. But it never landed. Because in the very next second, everything went wrong for them. The punch never connected. Before anyone could even process what happened, the man who threw it was already off balance. His arm twisted, his body pulled forward like he'd lost control of it. There was no dramatic movement, no wild reaction. Just a subtle shift, and suddenly, he wasn't in control anymore. Steven didn't strike back. Not yet. He simply let go. The man stumbled backward, nearly falling, confusion written all over his face. For a second, even his own friends looked unsure of what they had just seen. Around them, the party continued, but the energy had changed. A few people nearby had started to notice. The laughter wasn't as loud. The music felt distant now, like it was fading behind the growing tension in that corner of the room. And still, Steven Seagal stood there, calm as ever. No heavy breathing. No anger. No rush. Just patience. "You okay?" one of the men asked his friend, trying to play it off. Yeah, I slipped," he replied quickly, embarrassed more than hurt. But deep down, he knew that wasn't true. He hadn't slipped. Something else had happened. Something he didn't understand. Steven adjusted his stance slightly, his eyes never leaving them. Not aggressive, just aware. Watching every movement, every shift in weight, every flicker of hesitation. "You don't want this," he said quietly. This time, his voice carried a little further. A few more heads turned. One of the guys chuckled nervously. "Listen, old man. Just sit back down and we'll forget this happened." Old man. The word hung in the air. It was the kind of mistake people make when they judge by appearance, not by experience. Steven didn't react to the insult. He didn't need to, because the truth was already there, hidden in the way he moved, in the way he stood, in the way nothing about him seemed rushed or uncertain. This wasn't someone guessing what to do next. This was someone who had done this before. Many times. The man with the bottle tightened his grip, trying to rebuild his confidence. "You think you're scary or something?" No answer. Just silence. And somehow, That silence felt heavier than any threat. Another step forward. Closer now. Too close. The circle tightened again, but this time there was hesitation in their movements. A slight delay. A flicker of doubt. Because something didn't feel right anymore. Not after what just happened. Still, pride pushed them forward. And just like that, the moment of no return had arrived. For a brief second, everything stood still. The music still played in the background, but no one near that corner was listening anymore. Conversations faded. Eyes shifted. The space around them slowly cleared as people instinctively stepped back, sensing something was about to go very wrong. The three men weren't laughing like before. Not fully. There was still arrogance, but now it was mixed with irritation, confusion, and something they didn't want to admit, uncertainty. "All right, that's enough," the first guy snapped, trying to take control again. His pride had already taken a hit, and he wasn't about to walk away now. Not in front of everyone. He stepped forward again, this time more aggressive. "Who do you think you are?" he said, shoving Steven hard in the chest. The impact echoed louder than it should have. A few people gasped. "Phil." Steven Seagal didn't move back more than half a step. No stumble. No reaction. Just balance. Perfect balance. That alone made something inside the attackers snap. The second man moved in instantly, circling to the side. "He's playing games," he muttered. "Drop him." The third man lifted the bottle slightly, not swinging yet, just letting it be seen. A silent threat. Now it wasn't just about ego. It was escalation. Steven's eyes moved between them, not nervously, not quickly, just calmly tracking each one. Every angle. Every distance. 3 opponents. Close range. 1 possible weapon. Tight space. He had already calculated everything. "You don't understand what you're starting," he said, his voice low but clear. The first man smirked, though it didn't reach his eyes. "No, you don't understand. This party, these people, this is our world." He leaned in closer. "And you don't belong in it." A beat of silence passed. Then he swung. Fast. Direct. A clean right hook aimed straight for Steven's face. But before it could land, Steven moved. Not fast in a dramatic way. Not flashy. Just efficient. His hand came up, redirecting the punch like it weighed nothing. At the same time, he stepped slightly to the side, shifting his body out of the line of attack. The attacker didn't even realize he had missed. Until suddenly, his own momentum betrayed him. Steven caught his wrist. Twisted. And in one smooth motion, the man dropped to his knees with a sharp cry of pain. It happened so quickly that no one reacted in time. Not his friends. Not the crowd. Not even him. The second man froze for half a second, eyes wide. "What the?" That's when Steven released him. No follow-up strike. No unnecessary damage. Just control. The man collapsed to the floor, clutching his arm, breathing hard. Now the room was fully silent. The music still played, but it didn't matter anymore. Everyone was watching. The third man tightened his grip on the bottle, his confidence now cracking. You think this is over?" Steven looked at him. Calm. Unchanged. "This is exactly what I was trying to avoid," he said. But it was too late for that now. Because across the room, more men had started moving in. Friends. Back up. And they didn't look like they were here to talk. The situation had just shifted from a simple confrontation to something much bigger and far more dangerous. The shift was immediate. What started as a small confrontation in the corner had now pulled attention from across the entire room. Conversations died. Music faded into the background. One by one, people stepped aside, creating space, as if they instinctively knew what was coming next wouldn't be something they wanted to stand close to. 5 more men approached. Different faces. Same attitude. They moved with purpose, not hesitation. These weren't just drunk party guests anymore. They had seen enough to know something was wrong, and instead of backing off, they chose to step in. Bad decision. The first guy on the floor groaned, still clutching his arm. "He's not normal," he muttered through clenched teeth. But his warning came too late. "Doesn't matter," one of the newcomers replied coldly. "He's still just one man." That was the moment the situation crossed a line. Now it wasn't about ego. It wasn't about disrespect. It was a numbers game. And they thought they had already won. At the center of it all, Steven Seagal stood completely still. No panic. No rush. Just awareness. His eyes moved slightly, tracking each person as they spread out, forming a loose circle around him. Their spacing wasn't perfect, but it didn't need to be. They had the advantage in numbers, and they knew it. One of them stepped forward, rolling his shoulders like he was preparing for a fight he'd already decided he would win. "You had your chance to walk away," he said. Steven didn't respond. Another man moved in from the side, faster this time. No warning, no words, just a straight lunge aimed to tackle him off balance. This time, Steven didn't hold back. The moment the man entered range, he moved. A sharp step to the side. A quick deflection. And then, impact. Not loud. Not dramatic. But precise. His elbow drove into the attacker's centerline with controlled force, stopping him instantly. At the same time, Steven redirected his movement, using the man's own momentum to send him crashing into the table behind them. Glasses shattered. People jumped back. The room erupted into chaos. Before anyone could react, the second attacker charged. Steven turned smoothly, catching the incoming strike mid-motion. His grip tightened just enough, and then a sudden shift of weight sent the man spinning off balance before hitting the ground hard. Still no wasted movement. Still no aggression beyond what was necessary. But now, there was no doubt left. This wasn't luck. This wasn't chance. This was skill. Real skill. The kind built over years. The kind you don't see coming until it's too late. The remaining men hesitated. Just for a second. But that second was everything. Because now fear had entered the room. Not loud. Not obvious. But there. One of them glanced at his friend on the floor, then back at Steven. Who is this guy?" he whispered. No one answered. Because deep down, they were starting to realize the truth. They hadn't picked a fight with a random man at a party. They had stepped into something they didn't understand. And now, there was no easy way out. Steven took a single step forward. Not aggressive. Not rushed. But enough to make them all instinctively step back. The balance had shifted. Completely. And the worst part? This was still just the beginning. The hesitation didn't last long. Fear had entered the room, but pride was still stronger. One of the men exhaled sharply, shaking off the doubt. "Enough of this," he snapped, looking at the others. "We take him down now." That was all it took. The fragile pause shattered. Two of them rushed in at the same time, one from the front, one from the side, trying to overwhelm him with speed instead of strength. But at the center of it all, Steven Seagal didn't react like someone under pressure. He reacted like someone who had already seen this happen before. The first attacker threw a wild swing, faster than the others before him. It came in hard, reckless, fueled by frustration. Steven stepped just enough to let it pass. Not a full dodge. Not dramatic. Just precise. At the same moment, his hand came up, redirecting the strike and guiding the man forward. A subtle shift of balance. And suddenly, the attacker stumbled straight into his own teammate. Both crashed together, losing all coordination. The crowd gasped. Someone near the back whispered, "This guy's not normal." The words spread quickly. Like a ripple. Another man, angrier now, grabbed a glass bottle from a nearby table and smashed it against the edge, turning it into a jagged weapon. The sharp sound cut through the room. Now it wasn't just a fight. It was dangerous. "Let's see you handle this," he growled, stepping forward carefully this time. Slow. Cautious. He had learned something from the others' mistakes. Steven's eyes locked onto the broken glass for just a moment, then shifted back to the man holding it. Still calm. Still unreadable. "You're making this worse," Steven said quietly. But the warning meant nothing now. The man lunged forward, slashing wildly. Fast. Unpredictable. But sloppy. Steven moved in, not back, closing the distance instantly. His hand caught the attacker's wrist mid-swing, stopping the blade inches from his side. A sharp twist followed. A crack. The bottle dropped. The man screamed. Before the sound even finished echoing, Steven guided him down and out of the way, clearing space without wasting a second. The room was no longer just tense. It was breaking apart. People were backing away fast now, some pulling out their phones, others rushing toward the exits. The party had turned into something else entirely. Chaos. But even in the chaos, there was a strange kind of order around Steven. No panic. No rush. Just control. That's when more movement came from the far side of the room. 3 additional men pushed through the crowd, clearly connected to the others, but different. More focused. More serious. These weren't just loud party troublemakers. They moved like they had done this before. One of them glanced at the men already down, then at Steven, and his expression changed. Recognition. Wait, he muttered under his breath. The man next to him frowned. What? But before he could answer, Steven took a step forward. Not fast. Not aggressive. Just enough to shift the pressure. The group instinctively adjusted, spreading out again, but this time there was no overconfidence. No smirks. No careless movement. Only tension. Heavy, suffocating tension. Because now, they weren't sure anymore. Not about him. Not about themselves. The man who seemed to recognize something swallowed hard, his voice lower now. You should have stayed out of this. Steven looked at him. Calm. Unmoved. I tried, he replied. Silence followed. A long, heavy silence. Then, one of them reached into his jacket. Slowly. Carefully. And when his hand came back out, everything changed again. Because now, there was a gun in the room. The moment the gun appeared, everything stopped. Not just the fight. The entire room. No one moved. No one spoke. Even the music, still playing somewhere in the background, felt distant, irrelevant. All eyes locked onto the weapon. And then, onto Steven Seagal. The man holding the gun stepped forward slowly, his confidence returning in an instant. The fear that had crept into the room just seconds ago was gone, replaced by something colder. Control. Now, he said, raising the weapon slightly, let's see how tough you really are. A few people near the walls gasped. Someone whispered, this just got real. But Steven didn't move. Didn't raise his hands. Didn't step back. His eyes stayed locked on the man's grip, the angle of the weapon, the distance between them. Calculating. Always calculating. You don't want to do this, Steven said quietly. The man smirked. No. I think I do. He took another step closer. Too close. That was the mistake. Because in the next fraction of a second, everything happened at once. The man's finger tightened on the trigger. But before he could react, Steven moved. Fast. Not the controlled pace from before. Not the calm redirection. This was different. This was decisive. His hand struck the attacker's wrist with precise force, knocking the aim off just enough. The gun fired. A deafening sound exploded through the room. But the shot went wide. Before anyone could even process it, Steven had already stepped in, closing the distance completely. His grip locked onto the weapon, twisting it out of alignment. Another sharp movement. And the gun was no longer a threat. It dropped to the floor. The man didn't even have time to react before he was forced down, completely neutralized. Silence. Heavy. Unbelievable. For a split second, no one moved. Then, the remaining men rushed in together. Desperation. Anger. Fear. All at once. But now, it was too late. Steven turned to face them, his movements sharper, faster, more direct than before. There was no hesitation left. No warnings. No holding back. The first attacker came in swinging wildly. He was dropped instantly, his momentum turned against him before he even understood what happened. The second tried to grab him from behind. Steven shifted, breaking the hold effortlessly and sending him crashing into the floor with controlled force. The third, the one who had recognized something earlier. He stopped, frozen, watching, understanding. This isn't just some guy, he whispered, his voice barely audible. But Steven's attention was already back on him. Calm, focused, unavoidable. The man took a step back, then another. But there was nowhere left to go. Because the fight was already over. He just hadn't accepted it yet. Steven stepped forward once more. Not rushed. Not aggressive. Just final. And in that moment, everyone in the room understood the same thing. They hadn't just picked the wrong fight. They had chosen the wrong man. And now, there was no turning back. Silence took over the room. Not the kind of silence that feels calm. The kind that feels heavy. Uncomfortable. Unreal. Bodies were scattered across the floor, some groaning, some completely still, all of them defeated. The shattered remains of glasses and furniture reflected the dim lights above, turning what had once been a lively party into something unrecognizable. No music now. No laughter. Just the sound of slow breathing, and the quiet realization of what had just happened. At the center of it all stood Steven Seagal. Unshaken. Untouched. He looked around briefly, not with pride, not with anger, but with calm awareness. As if he was simply confirming what he already knew. It was over. The man who had held the gun earlier struggled slightly, trying to push himself up from the floor. His confidence was gone now, completely replaced by fear. Real fear. He looked up at Steven, his voice unsteady. Who are you? For a moment, there was no answer. Steven stepped closer, his presence alone enough to make the man freeze where he lay. You had every chance to walk away, Steven said quietly. Each word landed heavier than the last. But you didn't. The man swallowed hard, his eyes darting around the room, at his fallen friends, at the people watching from a distance, at the exit that suddenly felt too far away. We didn't know, he muttered. Steven's expression didn't change. That's the problem, he replied. A long pause followed. No one dared interrupt it. Because everyone in that room understood something now, something they hadn't realized before this night began. Strength isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. And it definitely doesn't need to prove anything. Steven reached down, picking up his coat from the back of a nearby chair. He brushed it off slightly, as if nothing significant had happened. As if this entire moment, this chaos, meant nothing to him. Which, in a way, it didn't. He turned toward the exit. No rush. No dramatic finish. Just a simple decision to leave. The crowd instinctively moved aside, creating a clear path without a single word being spoken. No one wanted to stand in his way. Not anymore. Halfway to the door, he paused. Just for a second. Without turning back, he spoke one final time. Next time, choose your target more carefully. His voice was calm, but it carried through the entire room. And no one would forget it. He continued walking, the sound of his footsteps the only thing breaking the silence now. The door opened slowly, and then he was gone. Just like that. Leaving behind nothing but questions. And a room full of people who had just witnessed something they couldn't fully explain. Moments later, the tension finally broke. People began to move again, quietly at first, then all at once. Some rushed to help the injured. Others whispered among themselves, trying to piece together what they had just seen. But no one had a clear answer. Only fragments. Only guesses. Because the truth was simple. They had underestimated a man who never needed to show who he was. And for one night, they paid the price for it. Far away from the noise, outside under the quiet night sky, Steven walked into the darkness without looking back. Calm. Controlled. Unbothered. Like nothing had happened at all. And maybe, for him, it hadn't.